Hello again, and welcome back to AP Biology, Semester 2, talking about carbon molecules. We're in Chapter 4 for dot 3, 4.3, Section 3 today, talking about a small number of chemical groups are key to the functioning of biological molecules. All right, here we're going to start with the comparison of chemical groups of female estradiol and male testosterone sex hormones. These are the sex hormones here. All right. The two molecules differ only in the chemical groups attached to a common carbon skeleton of 4 fused rings, shown here in abbreviated form. These subtle variations in molecular architecture influence the development of the anatomical and physiological differences between female and male vertebrae. All right, here the difference between the female and the male is we have the double bonds. Here we have 3 double bonds here, and we have hydroxide connected. Here we just have the oxygen and only 1 double bond. Here also we have 1 CH3. For the male, we have 2 CH3. Okay. The distinctive properties of an organic molecule depend not only on the arrangement of its carbon skeleton, but also on the molecular components attached to that skeleton. We can think of hydrocarbons, the simplest organic molecules, as the underlying framework for more complex organic molecules. A number of chemical groups can replace one or more of the hydrogens bonded to the carbon skeleton of the hydrocarbon. All right, so we're going to go on from there. We're going to go on to the chemical groups that are most important in the processes of life. Okay, let's consider the differences between testosterone and estradiol, a type of estrogen. These compounds are male and female sex hormones, respectively, in humans and other vertebrae. Both are steroids, organic molecules with a common carbon skeleton in the form of 4 fused rings. These sex hormones differ only in the chemical groups attached to the rings. The different actions of these 2 molecules on many targets throughout the body help produce the contrasting features of males and females. Thus, even our sexuality has its biological basis in variations of molecular architecture. In the example of sex hormones, different chemical groups contribute to function by affecting the molecule's shape. In other cases, the chemical groups affect molecular function by being directly involved in chemical reactions. These important chemical groups are known as functional groups. All right, the 7 chemical groups most important in biological processes are the hydroxyl, carbonyl, carboxyl, amino, sulfhydryl, phosphate, and methyl groups, which are actually right here. I don't mean to not be able to show you all of it, but we have the hydroxyl here, the carbonyl, carboxyl, sulfhydryl, phosphate, methyl, and the amino right there. Right? They are also hydrophilic and thus increase the solubility of organic compounds in water. The methyl group is not reactive, but instead often acts as a recognizable tag on biological molecules. Let's talk a bit about the hydroxyl group. Okay, in a hydroxyl group, a hydrogen atom is bonded to an oxygen atom, which in turn is bonded to the carbon skeleton of the organic molecule. Do not confuse this functional group with the hydroxyl ion, OH, negative. Okay? So, alrighty. Moving on to the carbonyl. Oh, by the way, when you come to class, you will be expected to give examples of each group. All right, you're going to do that in class. But for now, we're just going to talk about the different groups, the 7 groups. All right. So moving on to the carbonyl group here. The carbonyl group consists of a carbon atom joined to an oxygen atom by a double bond, as we can see here. All right. The carboxyl is right here. The carboxyl group. It's when an oxygen atom is double bonded to a carbon atom that is also bonded to an hydroxide group, or should I say a hydroxyl group. The entire assembly of atoms is called a carboxyl group. Okay, as we can see here. Going to move this over a bit so that you can see the next one that I'm talking about, the amino group. The amino group consists of a nitrogen atom bonded to 2 hydrogen atoms and to the carbon skeleton. As we can see here. All right, move it over a little bit so that you can see the next one, the sulfhydryl group. All right, the sulfhydryl group consists of a sulfur atom bonded to an atom of hydrogen. Resembles a hydroxyl group in shape, as you can see. Both shapes are similar or the same. Okay, one is just a hydroxyl and this one is the sulfhydryl. The next one we have here is the phosphate group. Okay, in a phosphate group, a phosphorus atom is bonded to 4 oxygen atoms. 1 oxygen is bonded to the carbon skeleton. 2 oxygens carry negative charges. The phosphate group is abbreviated here a little bit so that you can see. All right, it is an ionized form of a phosphoric acid group. All right, so this right here. All right, so and the last one. The methyl group. A methyl group consists of a carbon bonded to 3 hydrogen atoms. The methyl group may be attached to a carbon or to a different atom. So, right? Remember, you're expected to provide examples for each of these 7 groups. All right, carbon groups. All right, so moving on to ATP, an important source of energy for cellular processes. The phosphate column shows a simple example of an organic phosphate molecule. Here I have here we go. Right here. Right? A more complicated organic phosphate, adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, is worth mentioning because its function in the cell is so important. ATP consists of an organic molecule called adenosine attached to a string of 3 phosphate groups. 1, 2, 3. All right? Where 3 phosphates are present in series, as in ATP. One phosphate may be split off as a result of a reaction with water. This inorganic phosphate ion, HOPO3, 2 negative, is often abbreviated like such. Let me bring it here so that you can see so that you can see here. It's often abbreviated as such. I'm going to write it here. And you can also see it here in case you can't, it's too small. You can see it there. Okay? So this is the inorganic phosphate molecule there. All right. Having lost one phosphate, ATP becomes adenosine diphosphate, or ADP. Although ATP is sometimes said to store energy, it is more accurate to think of it as storing the potential to react with water. This reaction releases energy that can be used by the cell. All right, you'll learn about this in more detail in chapter 8. But right here is ADP. We have 3 phosphate groups attached to the adenosine, reacting with water, H2O, the inorganic phosphate, plus the 2 phosphate groups that lost one of the adenosine turns to ADP, plus energy is now ADP. The chemical elements of life, living matter, as you have learned, consists mainly of carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen, with smaller amounts of sulfur and phosphorus. These elements all form strong covalent bonds, an essential characteristic in the architecture of complex organic molecules. Of all these elements, carbon is the virtuoso of the covalent bond. The versatility of carbon makes possible the great diversity of organic molecules, each with particular properties that emerge from the unique arrangement of its carbon skeleton and the chemical groups appended to that skeleton. At the foundation of all biological diversity lies this variation at the molecular level. Okay, this concludes chapter 4, and the next time we meet, we will be going into chapter 5, the structure and function of large biological molecules. Until next time, ta-ta.